Good day, everyone. I'm Heather Guro Miller. I'm one of the health promotion specialists in Edmonton, and I'm here today to talk to you about mental fitness and suicide awareness. And I feel that I have aptly named this presentation, Stop This Train. I Want to Get Off. There are so many points in life where it just feels like too much. And you might be thinking to yourself, stop the train, I want to get off. And I would say this year is definitely one of those times. Combine the stressors that we all face throughout our lives with the challenge of a pandemic. And quite honestly, it's not surprising that all of us are feeling very weary. But before I get started, I want to take you through a disclaimer that we have for you. The presentation that you are about to view is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense's Strengthening the Forces Health Promotion Program. Any reproduction or retransmission of the slides contained in this presentation is strictly forbidden. So, I'd like you to imagine an overloaded circuit. And if we think about it, sometimes life just gets to be too much. And we might not even understand how we got to that point. We're just getting up every day and we're slogging through life. We're getting things done and we're checking the boxes off. And we think we're doing a good job. But yet something just feels like it isn't working. We're sort of like that electrical outlet. We're still getting power to all of the things plugged into it, but we're on the verge of setting the house on fire. And by house, I mean us. So what's overloading your circuits these days? You know, the truth is that we're all in this crazy life together, but we all experience it very differently. One of the dangers is that we start to compare those overloaded circuits to other people, whether that we're judging somebody else for not being able to handle the same situation that you've experienced well, or whether we're judging ourselves for the same thing. We all experience things differently. So we can see exactly the same thing, have exactly the same experience, but we are different beings. And so we're going to see those things differently and we're going to experience them differently. And the way that they make us feel is okay. This is truly the strangest year that most of us will ever know. And there are many elements of overload that come along with that. We're not only experiencing crisis fatigue, but we're also experiencing all of the other stressors that life has. Or maybe we're experiencing new stressors that have come up amidst the pandemic. And we're pairing that all together. And it's a lot. Not only that, but because of the pandemic, one of the most essential things to our well-being is being challenged, and that is our support network. So let's take a look at people who do well. When we look at this graph of the mental health spectrum, we have what we call people that are flourishing. So what does that mean? For many people, when they think of mental health, they only think about it being something to do with mental illness or having a mental health problem. It's almost as if mental health is something to be avoided or at the very least not valued. But mental health is a good thing. It's aligned with things like well-being and happiness and flourishing and positive psychology. Positive mental health is a state that can increase your general health, your well-being, and your resilience. So it's important. And it is not merely the absence of mental illness. People aren't functioning well just because they don't have depression or another mental illness. But there truly is this thing that we call emptiness. It's this feeling of any feeling devoid of any feeling towards your life, but it's not being mentally ill. So when we look at that far end of the graph, when we talk about flourishing happens when people have feelings of high levels of emotional, psychological, social well-being. That it happens when we experience this sense of vigor and vitality in our lives, that we have this self-determination and continuous self-growth that happens. And we have close relationships with other people, and that's really key for us. And we feel that we have a purposeful and meaningful life. And the research shows that these individuals that we call flourishers, they tend to miss fewer days of work. They experience fewer physical health problems such as cardiovascular disease, and they're more productive at work than people that aren't flourishing. Here's the sad news though. Only about 18% of adults fit that criteria of flourishing. That's a pretty low number when you look at it. The majority of us, though, we fit into that red zone. We fit into that moderate mental health. So that's about 57% of us. We aren't flourishing, but we don't have mental illness either. And then another 10% of us, in that blue part of the zone, they're in what we call languishing. So they are those individuals that feel that emptiness, that devoid of emotional, psychological, and social well-being. But they also don't have mental illness. So when we look at all of these pieces, anything less than flourishing can put us at higher risk for developing mental illness such as depression or anxiety. And unfortunately, when we look at these statistics, it's all of that research that was done happened long before COVID hit us. And for most of us, or many of us, our current reality is sort of coming up looking like this individual looking inside the refrigerator, and there's nothing there. Maybe they've got a box of cereal in the cupboard, and they've got a half empty bottle of ketchup. Well, that isn't a really exciting type of thing. Ketchup flavored Cheerios for breakfast. But the truth is that, we keep going back. We keep going back and we keep opening that fridge over and over again, hoping that there's going to be something there for us, hoping that there's going to be something that makes us feel satisfied, that gives us that sustenance that we're looking for. And it's not there because we've never experienced this pandemic before. So we don't know how to cope with it. And what ends up happening is that many of us start to lean towards a lot of those coping mechanisms that don't serve us well, like overeating, social media scrolling, gaming and gambling, TV binge watching, or maybe drinking more or getting high. All of those things we're trying to make up for this empty refrigerator that faces us. And it's very interesting because all we've really been asked to do is stay home, wear a mask, wash your hands. We haven't been asked to step on a battlefield as many of you have had to do. And yet we're finding this really hard. And maybe even many of you well-trained soldiers are finding this really hard. Why? Well, it comes down to resilience. And, when we think about resilience, some of it is biology. We have a survival mechanism, as do all other living beings, and we persist through challenges in life, even though nobody's ever really taught us how to do that. But there's also a large part of resilience resiliency and your resilient capacity that we've learned. And we learn that through the adversities that we face in our lives. Let's take, for instance, going to the gym. We might thrive in the gym, but we didn't always, because we had to develop that habit. So we had to push past wanting to lay on the couch and not go to the gym. And once we got ourselves there, we had to push past that wanting to quit when it got really hard with that last rep or that last interval. But we pushed ourselves to show up and to push past those limits that we had before. And as a result, it's become ingrained in us that we show up and we push. And so we thrive in the gym. Or maybe for many of you, you might thrive in the face of a natural disaster or a dangerous mission, because the training that you've been given has given you exposure to many of the things that you might face. But let's look at this pandemic. It's unique. None of us have ever faced this before. Not many people alive today have ever lived through a pandemic like this one. We haven't been exposed to the things that we're facing today. And the learning curve is huge. So it's a lot for our brains to take on. It's a whole new way of being with each other. I know for us in our office that the technology learning curve has been huge. We're used to being there in person and talking to you face to face, and we don't get to do that right now. And we've had to learn how to do this virtually. And that's really challenging. I'm talking to a computer screen right now rather than getting to see your faces. And I still want you to feel engaged and excited about what I'm saying, but it's very challenging when I don't feel that connection with you. So I hope that it comes across, but I never know. Right? And it's even more than that. It's a lot of the pieces that ground us, that give us that comfort of every day. It's the ritualistic way that we get up in the morning and we get ourselves ready for work and we go to our job and we take those steps that we take every day. And it's very automatic. And all of that's been taken away from us. And it's leaving us feeling very unsteady, like we are on shaky ground. It's that wanting a hug or needing a hug and not even being able to give it. It's walking out to what feels like a perfectly normal day outside, and yet there is this invisible thing out there that is threatening the way that we live, or for some people, if they live. And that's a lot. It's a lot. And this has been with us for 9 months now, and there's no end in sight. So it leaves us feeling weary. It really does. So truth be told, it's okay to not be okay right now, or any other time, whether there's a pandemic or not. It's okay to not be okay. But I also want to say that it's okay to be okay. So if you're feeling fine and life doesn't feel heavy and tiresome, well, that too is okay. In fact, it's more than okay. It's actually pretty fantastic. But let's talk about the positive sides. What can we do? What can we do to help our circuits from becoming overloaded? Well, I think that we need to look at the habits and the characteristics of those flourishers, because there was a lot of very similar habits and characteristics that those flourishers had that seemed to help them to flourish in life. So what are these people doing differently that gives them this sense of happiness? Well, number one, it's participating in cognitive activities. These individuals tend to practice gratitude more often. They cultivate optimism by really focusing on positive self-talk. They tend to engage in those positive mental behaviors that enhance our feelings of happiness. They have qualities of hopefulness, and they emphasize the positive aspects of a situation, both, well, all three, in the past and in the present and in the future. So when they're thinking about something that happened in their past, they try to see the good things. When they look at their current circumstances that they're in, they try to see the good things. When they look at the potential future that we're facing, they try to see the good things. They show appreciation and they show thankfulness for all aspects of their lives. They trust in their abilities, they trust in their qualities, and they trust in their judgment and their own self-worth. That's hard, but all of us can do it if we practice it. It takes time, but it becomes the norm that we look for the good things in life. Number 2, they participate in leisure activities. So these are truly activities that are done on one's free time with the full intention of just feeling enjoyment and pleasure. These are not the activities that you do to distract yourself from the things you could or you should be doing. And when I think of those distracting activities, I think of things like watching TV or playing on my phone, or I know for my son, it's gaming. He'll get sucked into that and be there for hours on end when he really knows that his house needs to be cleaned or that he needs to be working on his schoolwork. So those are the kinds of things that we're talking about when, they might give you some sense of pleasure, but they're also things that almost weigh on us, and they give us a feeling of guilt because we know we should be doing other things. But when the kinds of things I'm talking about are things that we actually plan and we pursue to give us that pleasure, to give us that feeling of relaxation or excitement. They could be, most times we're thinking about things like hobbies, things like outdoor pursuits. I know right now for me, I love winter hiking, so I've got my hiking cleats out and I'm out there weekly with my friends. Even during a pandemic, we can walk a long ways apart, but I can still make that social connection. I'm getting physical activity, I'm sucking up nature, and that really gives me that feeling of enjoyment and pleasure. We talk about other things that people might like. It might be woodworking. It might be working on a car in your garage. It might be, for some people, yoga or doing art or reading or even music, learning how to play guitar. Those are all things that can give us that feeling of pleasure. Number 3, pursuing and achieving goals. Flourishers pursue and achieve goals. They have goals and they work towards them with effort, with skill and motivation. And they experience a sense of satisfaction each time they take that little step towards that goal. And it could be anything. It doesn't have to be job related. In fact, sometimes it shouldn't be. But sometimes we need things that are outside of that. So it could be a fitness goal. It could be a financial goal. It could be a goal to save up to take the trip of a lifetime. These activities, with each step you take, builds your motivation. It gives you self-confidence and it increases your self-worth. All things that I think everybody would want. But most important, out of all of these things they found with these flourishers, the thing that influenced these individuals' ability to flourish was social connection. And I want to emphasize that it's not just about going out and partying all weekend with your friends. Now, that can play a part in that social connection too, but it's really important that we're connecting on a deeper level with people, that we have healthy relationships with people. We are effective and we're empathetic communicators, and we invite people into our lives that also give that back to us. So they too are effective and empathetic communicators, and they're giving that to us and we're giving it back to them. So there's this feeling of connection and intimacy that comes out of that. And part of it is when we think about the act of contributing to another person's life. And it doesn't have to be volunteering, although definitely that would give you that feeling. It could be as simple as doing some porch drop-offs during this pandemic of some delightful foods, especially coming up on Christmas. You know, if you're a great baker, maybe you're making some plates of cookies that you're going to drop off to your mom and dad or to your friends and your family. It could be anything where you're sort of stepping up and really giving back to other people. But it's also about having really meaningful conversations with people. And I know I'm guilty of this as well, but it's really about trying to avoid the really easy way out of just texting people or sending them emails, but really thinking about right now either finding a platform that you can talk to people on or picking up the phone and calling people. And depending on who they are, they might like one or the other better. I know my aging parents prefer a phone call. They don't like the new technology, and so they feel more connected to me if I just pick up the phone and I give them a call frequently. But that's really the key for these individuals. So on the other side of that, what's creating that heat for many of us? Most people associate stress with having too much to do, but we also know that it clearly can be having too little to do. When we talk about that feeling of pursuing goals, if we're not doing that and we're distracting and doing all of those distraction type of activities, that also can be a stressor. Just bearing in mind that procrastination is either a sign that there's so much going on in your head and it's leading you off on all these little squirrely paths, or it can simply be a lack of energy or motivation that you need to do something. We think about other things that overload us, it would be perceptions. It's the way that we see things. Remember, those flourishers are looking for that positive outlook on life. So if we are looking at things in a negative way, or we're kind of dooming and glooming about the future, that can cause us to be in fight or flight constantly. And so we're in this constant state of vigilance all the time, and that's going to create that overloaded circuit. And as we said, those flourishers, the most important thing for them was isolation. So isolation is going to be really devastating to the circuits if they can't get that social connection happening. That need for social connection on a deeper level, and it has to be deeper than sending just emojis and gifs and memes via text to your friends. It needs to have that true deep connection to offset that feeling of isolation. And mental illness. Mental illness obviously is going to cause those circuits to overload. So if you're facing something like anxiety or depression or other forms of mental illness, it's definitely going to contribute to that overload. And if you couple all of these things together with the rest of life stressors, it's very possible that people can be headed towards a tripped breaker or even a full-blown house fire. You know, we think about all the things that are the major causes of stress for us. Most people, the highest on their list would be work. But let's throw in the kids. Let's throw in our aging parents. Let's throw in some deployments. Let's throw in a posting and everything else that goes along with life, like bills, and now COVID. And you can see how people can get overwhelmed. And maybe even start a fire. So what I want to leave you with today is just some strategies for how you can help somebody that may be facing a fire or on the verge of fire. So just going to talk about 5 steps to helping somebody that's in emotional distress. Again, we're not, when we look at all of these steps that we talk about in all of our workshops and when we do briefings, we are not asking you to become social workers or therapists. We're simply asking you to be authentic human beings that care about another human being and trying to do the best you can for them. And you're not going to be perfect because none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect here today talking to you. I'm doing my best, just as we all are, but expecting perfection from us or doing everything right is unreasonable. So do your best. So the steps: ask, keep them safe, be there, help them connect, and stay connected. So what does ask mean? I notice you don't seem like yourself. Are you okay? How are you doing? Or maybe even, things sound like they're really bad right now. Are you thinking about suicide? And it may not be about suicide. They may just be having a crap day, a crap week, a crap month. And talking to you might be just what they needed to sort of unload and start to feel better, get supported, and get some perspective. But it may also be something bigger than you can help them with. And if you get that spidey sense, that feeling that there's something bigger going on, then you need to ask the question, and you need to say the words, and you need to be direct and ask the question about suicide. And if they answer yes, then you try to keep them safe. Ask them to keep a safe agreement with you. So by safe agreement, it means that you have asked them to not do anything that's going to further their thoughts about suicide, or do anything to activate their suicide plan if they have one. The second part of that is that you're going to connect them with somebody, have a safety contact for them. It could be a family member, it could be a close friend, it could be the padre, or if they feel that all of those are outside of something that they want to use, then we're going to have to investigate other social resources that you could tap into, and there's lots of them out there. So finding different ways that you can connect them with someone. Maybe it's you. It could be you, depending on your relationship with that person. If it's somebody that's very close within your close inner circle, maybe you're choosing that as well. But it's always good to have a second person in mind as well. Then we're going to ask them to have a safe or no use of substances. As you know, and many of you have probably experienced, we do things we wouldn't normally do when we're under the influence. So many of you have probably had the experience of doing something you deeply regret under the influence. I know I have, many eons ago, but I have. So we want to try to avoid them having overusing those substances, because it can lower the inhibition, and if they're already feeling the way they feel, it may lead them down a path they can't return from. And the reason we say safe or no use is because depending on their relationship with alcohol and drugs, it may be very challenging to get them to completely to avoid it. So in that circumstance, we might recommend to them that they are only using in the company of somebody else, so that they're not alone. And the last part is disabling the plan, if it's safe to do so. So for instance, you might say to a person, do you have a plan? And if they've told you, yes, I have a set of pills that I had for, let's say, an injury I had that are painkillers, and that is what I intend to use when the time comes. In that scenario, you could say to them, could you give me those pills for safekeeping so that I know that you're okay. On the other side of that, if their method of uh, suicide is a dangerous one to you, such as using a rifle, then you need to always keep your own safety in mind. And if there is a way for you to disable that plan safely without entering a room where you're now going to be possibly in danger, that is also something that's important for you to consider. So the next piece of this is just to be there, just to listen, to learn, and to acknowledge the pain that they're in. And it might feel a bit out of order because many of us just want to put on a fix-it hat and get right into action. We want to jump to solving their problems. We want to get them to the resources they need. We want to do things because it makes us feel better, but it's actually not what they need in that moment. And truth is that sitting in the darkness with them and sitting with their pain is uncomfortable for us, but it's really what they need. And one of the best tools that you can have in your back pocket is the ability to be silent. Silence is one of the best invitations that you can give somebody to encourage them to open up and to speak to you. And perhaps for the very first time for them, they'll be sharing what's going on with them. And that alone can be really powerful and really healing. Maybe you want to practice asking questions that can encourage that conversation. What's going on right now? How have you been coping with this so far? What have you tried to do to get help or to solve the situation that you're in? Have you thought about suicide before? If yes, what helped you last time? If no, what's different this time that's making you feel this way? So those are all inviting ways that you can open the conversation, but not hog the conversation. You don't have to have all the answers for them. It's not your job. You're not a therapist. You're just there to be a listening ear. And then lastly, yes, absolutely. We want to help them to connect them to those resources. This can be really intimidating for somebody that is struggling. One, it's scary. Two, when you're facing this kind of mental health crisis, it's very draining and tiring, and you may not have the energy to do it on your own. So having somebody that's there to sort of be your advocate can help you. And it can be as simple as you saying, hey, there's this phone number that we should call to get you started with help. Would you like me to pick up the phone and get you through the first part and hand it over to you? So you pick up the phone, you call, and you tell the person on the line the situation, and you say, I'm going to hand you over to my friend who would like to have a conversation with you. And just that simple step of somebody sort of taking those steps with you can help to make it a little bit easier for somebody. And lastly, and this is the hard part for some of us, you can't just walk away. You can't just wash your hands and carry on as if you never were involved in the first place. While you're not meant to be that person's end all and be all for them, and they do have their own responsibility to take care of their own mental well-being, you should want to, and you should check in with them once in a while. If you work with them, maybe you're just popping in and saying, hey, how you doing today? Or bringing them a coffee and just trying to connect with them on a human level, just to find out how they're doing. Because sometimes we slide back into things that aren't so well. Remember that we all wear masks, not just for COVID. We wear masks every single day. So we should be checking on everyone, regardless of this whole talk. We need to check on our strong friends, because strong friends can be hiding something. We need to check on our quiet friends, because they too might be keeping something back. We need to check on our happy friends because happy can be a mask. We just need to check on each other often. So that's all I have for you today. And I just want to leave you with a few takeaway messages. It's not your position in life that makes you happy. It's how you view it. Pursue something that makes you excited. Do something just for the joy of it. Stay connected, even in this hard time. Use all of those virtual platforms that we have available to us to stay connected to the people that you care about. And check on your friends. If you or somebody you know is struggling, just remember that you're not alone and help is available. If you're feeling like this slide could be important for you, then take a screenshot right now so that you have the CIFMAP number. CIFMAP is available for all serving members and their families. It is free and completely confidential, and it is an excellent resource. Within 24 hours, somebody will have called you back and will be connecting you with some resources. If you feel that you need more immediate services, and you feel that your life is at risk or somebody you know is at risk, then the Canada Suicide Prevention Services Crisis Support Line is an important number for you to have. Remember that it's okay to ask for help. And lastly, I just want to leave you with our contact slide. So if you have any questions about this presentation or anything else that Health Promotion does, take a quick screenshot so that you have our contact information. And if you'd like to learn more about what we do, I highly encourage you to follow us on Facebook or on Instagram and see some of the things that we're producing for you during this difficult time. And I just want to thank you all for listening to me today. Have a happy holiday. Be well.